A wealthy landowner mocked a German shepherd and a U.S. Marine until a hidden room exposed the truth. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. He wasn't supposed to matter in a place like this. A Marine with nothing but a worn duffel bag, a tired German shepherd at his heel, and a quiet hope that honesty still held value in a world ruled by men like Walter Grayson. The morning air over Grayson Estate lay still, heavy with the scent of cut grass and the faint sweetness of old apple trees. Sunlight fell across the gravel drive in long, pale ribbons, catching the dust that lingered behind Cole Harlan's boots. He paused at the iron gate, resting a hand on Ranger's neck, feeling the dog's slow, steady breath beneath his palm. Ranger's ears pricked forward, alert but calm, reading the land the way only a shepherd could. Cole whispered, almost to himself, "Easy, boy. We're just here to work." But even he felt the weight in the air, an old wealth kind of silence, the kind that watched you before it welcomed you. The estate stretched nearly 100 acres, rolling fields and white-fenced paddocks that glowed like ivory under the early sun. To most people, it looked like a dream. To Cole, it felt like a test. Because somewhere behind those trimmed hedges and spotless windows lived a man who measured worth by the shine of his boots and the balance of his bank account. And Cole had neither to offer. Ranger's tail lowered as footsteps approached from beyond the veranda. Walter Grayson stepped into view, blazer pressed sharp, expression set in a smile that never reached his eyes. He looked Cole up and down, then glanced at Ranger with a soft exhale that wasn't quite a laugh. "So this is the help they sent me." Cole kept his gaze steady. "Sir, I was told you needed security detail around the property line." "Security," Grayson repeated, as if the word amused him. "From what? Stray deer? Or do you plan for your dog to sniff out danger?" Ranger didn't respond to the sting. He simply stood his ground, quiet, dignified, amber eyes watching Grayson with a patience Cole envied. Cole straightened slightly, refusing the bait. "Ranger's trained to assist. He's disciplined." Grayson waved a dismissive hand. "A mutt with a uniformed owner is still a mutt." The words floated out lightly, but their edge was cold. Cole felt Ranger lean closer, just a breath, seeking reassurance more than protection. He let his fingers settle into the dog's fur, calm, grounding. The estate behind Grayson gleamed in the sunlight, pristine and perfect, but something beneath the surface felt wrong. A stillness too deep. A quiet too tight. Ranger sensed it first. His nose lifted, catching a faint trace of something hidden, something human, something afraid. Cole didn't know it yet. But that was the moment the truth began tugging on its first loose thread. The gravel crunched softly under Cole Harlan's boots as he followed Walter Grayson across the wide courtyard, the morning sun glinting off windows polished so clean they looked like sheets of still water. Ranger walked at Cole's side, his steps measured, ears flicking at every subtle sound that drifted from the sprawling property. The hush that hung over the estate felt unnatural, as if the land itself was holding something back. Grayson talked as he walked, speaking with the casual pride of a man who believed wealth granted him an audience. He pointed out the stables, the guest house, the caretaker's cabin, describing each structure with the same rehearsed charm one might use at a fundraiser. Yet beneath that charm lived a thin impatience, a restlessness that pulsed through his words. "You will patrol along the east fence line twice a day," Grayson said, gesturing toward a stretch of pasture that faded into tree shade. "My property is quiet, orderly. I expect it to stay that way." Cole nodded. "Understood, sir." Ranger paused near a patch of ground where an old shed sat leaning under the weight of time. His nose lowered, drawing in the scent of dust, old timber, and something else Cole could not name. The dog's tail stiffened briefly, not from fear, but from curiosity sharpened by instinct. Cole made a mental note. Grayson's tone shifted when he noticed the dog's interest. That building is off limits. It is nothing but junk and bad structural beams. If you value your job, keep clear. Ranger lifted his head, amber eyes steady, but Cole placed a gentle hand against his shoulder, guiding him onward. It was not worth pushing on the first day. Still, the quiet edge in Grayson's voice lingered. They reached a long porch shaded by a wide awning. Decorative lanterns hung along the railing, their glass catching the light in delicate, warm reflections. The place was beautiful, but the kind of beauty that felt curated rather than lived in. Cole could sense Ranger thinking the same thing. The dog's gaze drifted across the windows, the corners, the closed doors, reading the estate like a map. Grayson turned, crossing his arms. "Tell me something, Sergeant. Why take a job like this? With your background, you could have done better." Cole kept his voice even. "I needed steady work. Something quiet." "Quiet," Grayson repeated, amused. "You chose well. Nothing happens here that I do not control." Ranger released a small exhale, barely a sound, as if disagreeing. Grayson noticed and smirked. "That dog of yours seems to think otherwise." Cole let the comment pass. The wind shifted, carrying a faint note of something sweet, something that did not belong to open fields or manicured gardens. Ranger lifted his head again. The scent brushed past Cole a moment later, soft and fleeting, like perfume that had been worn in a closed room too long. Grayson's expression flickered, just for a heartbeat, before settling back into its practiced calm. Cole saw it. Ranger sensed it. And the estate, with all its wealth and stillness, felt suddenly less like a sanctuary and more like a house holding its breath. By late afternoon the estate had settled into a quiet so complete it felt rehearsed, as if every sound knew exactly where it was allowed to exist. Cole Harlan walked the eastern fence line just as Walter Grayson had instructed, the sun dipping low behind the rolling fields, painting the white railings in long amber strokes. Ranger trotted beside him, nose close to the ground, tail held steady in a thoughtful line. Cole felt the day's weight in his shoulders, but Ranger moved with a purpose that made him slow his pace. There was a message in the dog's posture, something half-spoken but unmistakably real. The breeze carried a mix of hay, old barn dust, and the faint metallic scent of tools from the caretaker's shed. Yet beneath it all lingered that same sweet trace from earlier, drifting like a memory that refused to fade. Ranger paused, ears lifting toward the cluster of old oak trees near the shed Grayson insisted was unsafe. Cole followed the dog's gaze. Nothing moved. Nothing stirred. But the silence there was different, heavier. Ranger stepped forward until the old boards of the shed creaked softly under his weight. Cole whispered, "Not now, boy," though he felt the same pull. The dog pressed his nose to the gap under the warped door, drawing in a slow breath. His tail lowered, not in fear, but in recognition. Cole rested his hand on Ranger's back. The dog leaned into the touch, steadying himself, then stepped away as if respecting Cole's hesitation. They continued along the fence until the distant chime of the estate bell echoed across the property. It was gentle, a soft note meant to call staff back toward the main house before dusk. Cole turned, taking in the view of the manor framed by the sinking sun. Warm light glowed behind the tall windows, giving the illusion of comfort. Yet Ranger's quiet unease suggested something else lived behind those walls. As they approached the porch, Grayson stood waiting with a glass of iced tea in hand, condensation sliding slowly down the side in the warm evening air. His smile was polite, but there was an edge beneath it, a subtle tension that flickered like a shadow against the fading light. "How was the patrol?" he asked. "Calm," Cole replied. "Peaceful place you have here." "Peaceful because I maintain order," Grayson said, tapping his glass lightly. "Discipline keeps trouble out." Ranger watched him, head slightly tilted, reading more than his words. Grayson noticed and shook his head with a soft exhale. That dog of yours does not know when to relax. Cole kept his tone even. He listens to what the land tells him. Grayson paused mid-sip. The land tells him nothing. It is a house, Sergeant, not a mystery. But the way his jaw tightened betrayed something else, something he did not want heard. As Grayson turned toward the door, a faint rustle sounded from the second-story window, a shift of curtains barely noticeable. Ranger's head snapped up, eyes locked. On the glass. Cole followed the dog's gaze, catching the briefest silhouette, a shape too still to be casual. The curtain fell back into place. The window went quiet. Ranger gave a soft, low exhale, almost a whisper. Cole felt it rather than heard it. Someone was in that room. And they had been watching. Evening settled slowly over the Grayson estate, the kind of soft fading light that stretched shadows long across the ground and softened the sharp edges of the white fences. Cole Harlan stood at the base of the porch steps, hand resting lightly on Ranger's shoulder as the dog continued to stare at the window where the curtain had moved just moments before. Ranger's ears remained lifted, tuned to something beyond the quiet hum of cicadas. His stillness carried weight, a silent message that Cole had learned to trust long before he ever set foot on this property. Cole waited, counting the gentle rise and fall of Ranger's breath. Nothing stirred in the upper window now. The glass reflected only the deepening sky, brushed with streaks of orange and rose. Still, the unease lingered like a thin mist. Ranger stepped forward, nose tilting toward the house again before shifting back to Cole's side, as if urging patience rather than pursuit. Cole exhaled slowly. He had seen men pretend strength, seen buildings hide secrets, seen silence used as a veil. This felt familiar in a way he wished it did not. Inside the house, the air smelled faintly of furniture polish and lavender, a blend too carefully arranged to feel natural. Grayson walked ahead, gesturing toward the dining room where a table was set with silverware that gleamed under the warm overhead lights. "Dinner is provided for staff," Grayson said with an air of pride, though his tone lacked warmth. "But you and your dog will eat separately. I prefer to keep order in my home." Cole nodded politely. Ranger simply sat, watching the man as though reading each gesture. Grayson poured a glass of water from a crystal pitcher. The sound of the water seemed louder than it should have been, echoing faintly through the quiet house. "I run this estate with precision," Grayson said. "Things stay exactly where I put them. And people stay where I allow them." Cole kept his expression neutral. "Understood, sir." Grayson's eyes narrowed a fraction. "Good." A moment later, a soft thump sounded from upstairs. It was faint, but clear. Ranger's head lifted instantly. The dog's ears aligned toward the staircase, body leaning ever so slightly forward. Grayson stiffened. His fingers tightened around the edge of the pitcher before he set it down with controlled care. "Old house," he said too quickly. "It settles." Ranger's gaze did not move. Cole could feel the shift in the air, the discomfort Grayson tried to hide. The dog's instincts were rarely wrong. Cole knelt, running a hand along Ranger's back. The shepherd leaned into him, grounding him with quiet certainty. Another faint sound drifted down, a soft shuffle, like fabric brushing against wood. Cole stood slowly, not confronting, not accusing. Just listening. Grayson cleared his throat, forcing a smile. "If you wish to continue working here, Sergeant, it would be wise not to let your imagination run away from you." Ranger gave a low exhale, almost a sigh, his eyes still fixed on the upper floor. Cole felt the meaning settle inside him with the weight of truth. Something was up there. Someone. And the house, wrapped in wealth and quiet, was doing everything it could to keep that presence hidden. Night settled over the estate with a softness that felt almost intentional, as if the house itself wanted to lull every watchful eye into rest. But Cole Harlan did not rest. Ranger stayed at his side, stretched out on the small rug near the guest room door, eyes half closed yet alert in the quiet way only a German shepherd could manage. The room was simple compared to the grandeur of the main house, furnished with an oak bed, a narrow dresser, and a single lamp casting a warm, low glow across the walls. Outside the window, crickets sang in steady rhythm, their voices rising from the fields beyond the porch. Cole sat on the edge of the bed, elbows resting loosely on his knees. He replayed the evening in his mind, every shift of Grayson's expression, every sound from the upstairs hall, every instinct Ranger had pushed toward him. His breathing stayed slow and calm, but the tension in his chest did not fade. Ranger stirred. A soft huff escaped the dog's throat, the kind that hinted at unease rather than fatigue. Cole lowered a hand to the dog's head. Ranger pressed into the touch, then lifted his gaze toward the door. Ears rising at a sound Cole had not yet heard. There it was. A faint movement. Not a footstep. Not fabric. Something softer, like breath traveling through the narrow seam under a distant door. Cole stood, walking slowly toward the room's entrance. He listened. Ranger moved with him, quiet as a shadow, tail low, body poised. The house creaked gently, the kind of old wood groan that came from settling beams cooling in the night air. But beneath it lay something intentional, a pattern too controlled to be random. Cole opened the guest room door just enough to look down the hallway. The air there felt still, almost suspended. A narrow strip of moonlight spilled through a small window at the far end, touching the rug with a pale silver edge. Ranger stepped slightly ahead, nose lifted. His breath drew in carefully, sorting scents with the practiced attention of a dog who trusted the world one detail at a time. He turned his head toward the staircase. Cole waited, letting Ranger speak in silence. The dog took one step forward. Then another. Cole followed with the same deliberate quiet he used during late-night patrols years before, his body remembering motions his mind did not name. Halfway to the stairs, a soft sound drifted down. A gentle, irregular whisper, like someone shifting lightly in a chair or adjusting a blanket. It came from the upper floor again. Cole did not need to look at Ranger to know the dog recognized it. Ranger's ears tipped toward the sound, and his tail curled slightly inward, signaling the strange blend of alertness and empathy he reserved for human distress. Cole whispered, "You hear it, too." Ranger leaned closer to the banister, his breath steady, his presence grounded. The house remained silent for several long seconds. Then a soft thud sounded overhead, lighter than a footstep but heavier than a settling board. Cole's eyes lifted. Ranger's gaze did not break from the upper landing. Something was happening in that unseen room. Something Grayson did not want found. And yet, the house itself seemed tired of keeping it secret. The air on the upper landing felt different, as if the quiet there held its breath the moment Cole, Harlan and Ranger reached the first step. A soft glow from a nightlight cast a faint circle of warmth against the wall, leaving the rest of the hallway in gentle shadow. Cole paused, letting Ranger move just ahead of him, the dog's paws silent on the polished wood. Ranger's body stayed low but calm, guided not by fear but by a steady certainty, as if something familiar pulled him onward. Cole placed his hand lightly on the banister, feeling the smooth curve of the old oak rail beneath his fingertips. The house did not creak now. It waited. Halfway up the stairs, a thin, barely audible sound drifted down again. It was softer than a whisper, yet carried weight, a small shift of presence behind a closed door. Ranger reached the landing first, pausing near the second door on the right. His nose lifted, drawing in long, thoughtful breaths. Cole joined him, noting the faint scent he had picked up earlier in the yard. Sweet. Subtle. Human. Ranger gave a quiet rumble, not warning, not distress, but recognition. Cole leaned slightly closer, listening. Behind the door came the faintest rustle, like someone shifting their weight carefully to avoid notice. Cole straightened and stepped back, not wanting to alarm whoever was inside. Ranger's ears flicked toward the staircase behind them. Cole turned. Walter Grayson stood at the base of the stairs, one hand resting on the newel post, his expression tight and controlled beneath the soft light. "What are you doing up here, Sergeant?" His voice remained calm, but it was a practiced calm, the kind that stretched thin around the edges. Cole kept his tone even. "I heard something. Just checking the perimeter inside." "There is no perimeter inside," Grayson replied. "Your duties end downstairs." Ranger did not move from the door. His gaze remained fixed on the wood as if he could see straight through it. Grayson's eyes narrowed at the dog's posture. "Call him away," he said. "Now." Cole hesitated for a breath. Ranger shifted his weight but did not step back. Something in the silence behind that door held him in place, like a promise he was not willing to abandon. Cole spoke gently. "Ranger, here." The dog looked up at Cole, then back at the door, torn between obedience and instinct. Slowly, he stepped away, but his head stayed turned toward that hidden room. Grayson exhaled, the relief in it barely disguised. "Good. Now return to your quarters. There is nothing here for you." Cole nodded, though his eyes lingered on the door. "If someone is upstairs, sir, they may need assistance." Grayson's reply was immediate. "There is no one upstairs except me." But Ranger's tail had lowered again, and his posture softened into something achingly gentle, the way he behaved around people who were frightened or lonely. Cole felt the message in that stillness. The house was not empty, no matter what Grayson claimed. As Cole guided Ranger back toward the stairs, the light from the hallway dimmed behind them, settling once more into quiet. Yet the scent, the rustle, the presence behind the door lingered in Cole's mind. Ranger glanced back one last time. The truth, whatever it was, waited just beyond that thin layer of wood, patient and unresolved. The next morning arrived with a pale, hesitant sunlight that filtered through the thin curtains of Cole Harlan's room, laying soft gold across the wooden floorboards. Ranger was awake before Cole opened his eyes, sitting near the door with an alert stillness, his ears lifted just slightly, listening to the house breathe. Cole dressed quietly, his mind returning to the sound behind the upstairs door and the way Grayson's voice had tightened when he found them on the landing. Some truths did not shout. They whispered. They waited. And Ranger, more than anyone, seemed to understand their language. When Cole stepped into the hallway, Ranger walked beside him with measured calm. The house carried a faint scent of brewed coffee and toasted bread drifting from the kitchen, but beneath it lingered that same sweet fragrance from the night before. Ranger paused near the base of the stairs, nose tilting upward. Cole rested a hand on the dog's head, acknowledging the memory they both carried. They made their way outside for the morning patrol. Dew clung to the grass, sparkling under the gentle sunlight like tiny pieces of glass scattered across the lawn. The distant hills glowed with early warmth, and the air held the crisp scent of damp earth. Ranger moved with purpose, checking familiar spots, lingering near the old shed again. Cole watched the dog's behavior closely. Ranger's posture softened each time he neared the structure, not tense, not wary, but compassionate, as if sensing someone in need rather than a threat. Cole knelt beside him. "Someone is here, isn't there?" Ranger pressed his head briefly against Cole's shoulder, offering an answer without words. Later, as they walked back toward the main house, Cole saw Grayson on the veranda, speaking briskly on his phone. His voice carried through the still air. "No, I told you, no visitors. I do not care what she said. She stays where she is." Cole slowed his steps. Ranger stopped entirely, gazing up at Grayson with quiet intensity. Grayson noticed them, ending the call abruptly. He forced a smile, though the tension in his eyes remained. "Sergeant, your patrol better be thorough. I expect excellence." "Yes, sir," Cole replied, keeping his tone neutral. Ranger's tail lowered. His gaze shifted toward the upper windows again. Just then, a soft movement caught Cole's attention. A curtain on the second floor pulled back only an inch before falling quickly into place, like a hand had released it in haste. Cole lifted his eyes, steady and calm. Ranger's ears pricked at the exact same moment, confirming what Cole suspected: someone was watching them, someone gentle and hidden, not dangerous but afraid. Grayson stepped forward, blocking Cole's view of the window. "If you have questions, Sergeant, ask me directly," he said, his voice clipped. "Do not go looking for answers where they do not exist." Cole held his gaze, letting silence answer for him. Ranger stood perfectly still, amber eyes reflecting something deeper than curiosity. Something like recognition. And in that moment, Cole understood that the quiet presence behind the closed door was not an intruder or a threat. It was a soul waiting for someone to listen. The estate looked the same as it had the day before, pristine and orderly, but now its calm felt thinner, stretched over a truth that could no longer stay hidden. Ranger stepped closer to Cole, leaning gently against his leg. The message was clear. They were getting close. The afternoon sun drifted behind a bank of passing clouds, softening the light across the Grayson estate and giving everything a muted hush, as if the land itself was listening. Cole Harlan walked the back perimeter with Ranger close beside him, the dog's steady gait matching each of Cole's steps. The grass whispered beneath their boots, and somewhere in the distance a single wind chime rang with a gentle metallic sigh. Ranger stopped near the old orchard fence, nose rising toward the upper windows of the house. His body grew still, not rigid, but thoughtful, as if he sensed a change in the quiet rhythm of the place. Cole followed the dog's gaze. A shadow moved behind one of the curtains upstairs, faint and fleeting, like a hand pulling away just before being seen. Cole stayed motionless for a moment, absorbing every small detail: the way the curtain fluttered as if someone had stepped back too quickly, the subtle tremor in Ranger's pause, the quiet breath that left the dog's chest. "You saw it too," Cole murmured. Ranger leaned gently against his leg, confirming the truth without a sound. They continued their loop around the property until Cole noticed something near the back garden wall. A small scrap of fabric lay caught on a rose thorn, pale in color and soft, almost like part of a dress. He picked it up carefully. The fabric carried the faint scent he had noticed for 2 days now, sweet and tired, a fragrance that seemed to belong to someone who rarely saw fresh air. Ranger sniffed the torn piece and let out a soft breath, not alarmed, but saddened, as if the fabric reminded him of someone he had once known. Cole tucked it into his pocket and straightened when he heard footsteps approaching. Grayson emerged from around the corner of the garden, his expression calm but his eyes sharp, scanning Cole's hand before settling on Ranger. "Enjoying the landscaping, Sergeant?" he asked lightly. Cole kept his tone even. "Just walking the perimeter, sir." "Good," Grayson said with a tight smile. "Stay focused on that. There is no need to wander into areas that do not concern you." Ranger stepped closer to Cole, placing himself subtly between the two men. Grayson's smile thinned. "That dog watches me as if he expects to find something. It is irritating." Cole gave no answer. Ranger held his gaze steady, unblinking, not challenging, but quietly aware. Grayson turned away with a dismissive wave, heading back toward the house. But before he disappeared inside, he paused and looked over his shoulder. "A piece of advice, Sergeant. When you work for someone, you respect their privacy." The door closed behind him. Ranger lifted his head, ears tuned to the shifting sounds inside the house. Cole felt the same tension settle across his shoulders, the sense that the truth was no longer content to hide. As they approached the porch, a gentle tapping reached their ears. It came from the second-floor window, rhythmic and hesitant, like someone lightly brushing their fingers against the glass. Ranger stopped beneath the window, looking up with an expression that was almost tender. Cole knew then that whoever was behind those curtains was not trying to frighten them. They were trying to reach them. A quiet plea wrapped in the softest touch of sound. And Ranger, faithful as ever, heard it first. The tapping at the second-floor window faded into the late afternoon quiet, leaving behind a stillness that felt almost deliberate. Cole Harlan stood beneath the eaves with Ranger pressed gently against his leg, the dog's eyes lifted toward the curtain that had shifted only moments before. The estate around them seemed unchanged, calm and orderly, yet Cole felt a shift in the air, something subtle and human, like a plea carried on a breath. Ranger moved first. He stepped away from the porch and circled toward the side path that led to the service entrance of the house. His paws landed softly on the stone walkway, each step infused with a quiet certainty. Cole followed, guided by the dog's instinct more than his own logic. The service door was slightly ajar, just wide enough to suggest someone had passed through recently but careful enough not to draw attention. Cole pushed it open gently. Inside, the hallway smelled of laundry soap, old cedar, and the faint sweetness he recognized from the scrap of fabric in his pocket. Ranger inhaled slowly, ears angling forward. Cole closed the door behind them. The interior corridor was lined with storage cabinets and linen shelves, all meticulously organized, yet a faint trail of dust disturbed the floor near the end of the hallway. Ranger followed it without hesitation. Cole's steps were slower, cautious, respectful of the fragile quiet in the house. At the end of the hallway stood a narrow door he had not noticed before, its frame tucked behind a stack of folded blankets. Ranger stopped in front of it, tail lowered in sympathy rather than alarm. Cole brushed his fingers against the doorknob. It was cool, smooth, as if it had not been touched often by those who lived freely in the house. He listened. For several moments, there was nothing. Then came a soft shift of fabric, the tiniest sound of breath catching in a small space. Ranger's posture softened. He nudged the bottom of the door with his nose, a gentle encouragement rather than an attempt to open it. Cole whispered, "It is all right. We are not here to hurt you." The sound behind the door stilled, then returned even softer, as though whoever waited inside was gathering the courage to exist just a little louder. Before Cole could speak again, a sharp echo of footsteps approached from the main hall. Ranger straightened, ears alert. Cole turned just in time to see Walter Grayson appear from around the corner, his face flush with surprise that quickly hardened into something firmer. "Sergeant," Grayson said, voice tight, "this area is restricted." Cole stepped slightly aside, shielding the narrow door from full view without moving aggressively. "I heard something. I thought someone might need help." Grayson's jaw moved, pressing down on a response he did not seem ready to release. "There is no one here," he insisted. "You are imagining things." Ranger took a single step toward the door again, brushing his nose softly against the seam, offering silent comfort to whoever hid behind it. Grayson's expression tightened. "Call your dog away." Cole placed a hand gently on Ranger's back. The dog stepped back, though his eyes never left the door. As Grayson dismissed them with a curt gesture, Cole caught a new sound from behind the wood. A quiet exhale. A tremble of hope. Someone was definitely there. And they knew Ranger. They trusted him enough to reach out. The truth was getting closer, no longer content to stay hidden in the dark corners of this immaculate house. Evening settled early over the estate, as if the sky itself wished to dim before any more secrets could slip into the light. Cole Harlan walked the west path with Ranger at his heel, the dog's movements slow and deliberate, carrying the same thoughtful weight he had shown near the narrow hidden door. The wind brushed through the tall grass, soft and steady, but Ranger's ears were tuned to something deeper, something inside the house that seemed to pulse like a quiet heartbeat waiting to be heard. When they reached the back steps, Ranger paused. His gaze lifted toward a window on the second floor, the same one where the curtain had shifted earlier that day. Cole followed the line of the dog's eyes, and for a brief second, he saw a faint glow behind the glass, a soft amber light. That flickered like someone had turned on a small bedside lamp. It was not bright enough to attract attention, but it was deliberate, a signal almost too gentle to notice. Ranger took a step forward, then looked back at Cole, asking without sound. Cole whispered, "Let us see what the house wants us to know." Inside, the hallways held a quiet that felt carefully arranged, as if every echo chose its path. Cole kept his footsteps measured, respectful. Ranger moved ahead, guiding rather than searching, his nose tracing a faint trail of sweetness that lingered near the baseboards. They reached the second-floor landing without meeting anyone. The air there felt warm, touched by the soft glow leaking from beneath a door farther down the hall. It was not the narrow door from earlier. This one belonged to a guest room Cole had never seen occupied. Ranger stopped outside it, tail lowered in gentle anticipation. Cole listened. A faint rustle, then silence. He knocked softly. "Is someone in there?" The rustle came again, followed by a quiet hesitation, a pause thick with uncertainty. Then, in the smallest voice, barely more than a breath, came a reply. "Please, do not tell him." Cole felt his chest tighten. Ranger pressed his body gently against the door, offering comfort the way only a dog with a loyal heart could. Cole kept his voice low and steady. "I will not." The doorknob turned slowly. The door opened just an inch, then two, revealing a young woman with pale blonde hair that fell softly around her face. Her eyes were tired, gentle, and filled with a fear that came not from harm but from confinement. She looked first at Cole, then at Ranger, and her breath caught. "Ranger," she whispered, her voice trembling with familiarity. Ranger stepped forward, touching his nose softly to her hand. She knelt, cupping his face with both palms, tears gathering as if a memory long buried had surfaced. "I knew it was you," she said. Cole watched, stunned by the gentle recognition between them. "You know him?" he asked softly. She nodded. "I rescued him years ago. Before my father made him disappear." Cole felt the pieces shift, rearranging into something clearer. The sweet scent, the hidden door, the watcher behind the curtains. "You are Emily," he said quietly. She lifted her eyes, startled he knew her name. "Yes." Ranger leaned against her, offering warmth she had long been denied. Emily looked past Cole, toward the hallway. "He does not know I made the light. He does not know I have been trying to get someone to listen." Cole lowered his voice. "I am listening." Her breath trembled again. "There is more you need to see. And it is not up here." Ranger turned toward the hallway, as if he already knew where the truth was waiting. And Cole understood, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that the quietest room in the house, the one Walter Grayson guarded most fiercely, was finally ready to speak. Emily stepped into the hallway with a quiet caution, her hand resting lightly on Ranger's neck as if his presence anchored her to a steadier world. The soft glow from her room faded behind them, leaving the corridor washed in the dim evening light that filtered through the narrow windows. Cole Harlan walked at her other side, matching her careful pace. The house felt different now, not heavier, but more honest, as if it finally allowed its hidden stories to breathe. Emily's voice was gentle when it came. "There is a place my father never meant for anyone to find. Ranger used to stop there when he was younger. He sensed things long before I understood them." Cole listened, letting each word settle. Ranger moved ahead with a calm certainty, guiding them toward the back of the house, where the service hallway narrowed and the air grew cooler. The faint scent of cedar and lavender lingered in the quiet space, a mixture that felt both comforting and haunting. When they reached the small storage alcove, Ranger paused, turning slightly to look back at Emily. She nodded, encouraged by the dog's trust. "It is behind here," she whispered. Cole gently pushed aside a stack of folded linens, revealing the narrow door he and Ranger had discovered days earlier. The doorknob gleamed faintly, untouched by the warm light of the house. Emily moved closer, her breath unsteady. "He told me this room was unsafe. That the floorboards were weak. But he was only trying to keep me away." Cole let his fingers graze the cool metal of the knob. Ranger stood beside him, tail low, posture soft with a protective stillness. Cole eased the door open. A hush rolled out like a held breath finally released. The room beyond was small, lit only by the faint evening glow that streamed through a tiny window near the ceiling. Dust floated lazily in the air, catching the soft light in delicate patterns. But it was not the dust that held Emily still. It was the objects arranged with quiet intention along the walls, a stack of old photographs, handwritten letters tied with faded ribbon, a wooden keepsake box carved with initials, and a wool blanket folded neatly over a chair. Emily stepped inside slowly, her eyes widening with recognition and something deeper. "These are mine," she whispered. "Things I thought were lost." She reached for a photograph, her fingers trembling. It showed her as a child, sitting on the grass with Ranger as a puppy curled beside her. The edges were worn from years of handling. "He said I misplaced them," she murmured. "But he hid them here." Ranger walked to the corner of the room, nosing gently at a small stack of journals. Cole knelt to lift one, noticing Emily's handwriting on the cover. Drawings, notes, memories. All stored away where no one would see. Emily's voice thinned to a soft ache. "He kept pieces of my life in this room. Not destroyed. Not forgotten. Just, hidden." Cole looked around the quiet space, feeling the weight of the truth beginning to assemble itself. Grayson had built an estate on order and control, but here was a room he could not erase, a room filled with the tender proof of a daughter he wanted the world to overlook. Emily touched Ranger's head, tears forming gently, not from fear but from recognition. "He remembered me," she said, her voice warm and breaking all at once. "Even when I was being pushed aside." Ranger leaned into her, offering a comfort that asked for nothing in return. And in that still, dust-softened moment, Cole understood, this hidden room was not the end of the truth. It was the beginning. The air inside the hidden room settled around them like a gentle confession, soft and steady, holding the weight of years that had gone unspoken. Emily stood in the center of the small space, her fingers brushing the edges of an old photograph as if touching a memory too delicate to name. Ranger stayed close to her side, his presence a quiet anchor, his eyes warm with recognition that carried deeper meaning than words ever could. Cole Harlan scanned the room slowly, letting the subtle details speak for themselves. Nothing here was chaotic or discarded. Every item, every folded page, every small keepsake felt placed with intention, as though someone had tried to freeze time in hopes that one day it might be remembered. Emily drew a slow breath. "He said I lost these things. That I misplaced them. But he kept them." Her voice wavered, not in anger, but in the kind of sorrow that gathers when old explanations fall apart. Cole rested a steady hand on the wooden desk to his left, noticing the thin layer of dust coating everything except one object, a small silver locket resting near the edge. Its surface shone slightly under the dim light, as if it had been touched recently. Emily noticed it too. She lifted the locket carefully, opening it with the tenderness of someone expecting a familiar song. Inside was a picture of her as a child, holding Ranger when he was just a young pup. Her breath caught. "I thought this was gone," she whispered. Ranger leaned closer, nudging her hand with a soft, loving certainty. Cole watched them, understanding now why Ranger had been drawn to this place long before Emily had stepped forward. The dog had remembered her scent, her presence, the stories that lived quietly in these walls. Emily looked up at Cole, her voice steadier. "My father did not want the world to see the version of me that lived here. The version that loved, that trusted, that felt deeply. He hid it all, as if this softer part of me was something to be put away." Cole felt the quiet truth settle between them. Wealth could polish floors, manicure lawns, and build fences high enough to hide a life, but it could not silence the echoes of what a person once held dear. Ranger walked toward the far corner, where a wooden crate sat tucked beneath a small table. He pawed it gently, then looked up with the same patient insistence he had shown all along. Emily knelt beside him and opened the crate. Inside were letters addressed to her from people she recognized, friends from years ago, mentors, even distant relatives. Letters she had never received. Letters that spoke of encouragement, invitations, and milestones she had been told never existed. Emily pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed by the soft ache of understanding. "He kept these from me," she said, the words barely above a whisper. Cole knelt beside her, voice gentle. "Sometimes people hide what they cannot control. But the truth has a way of finding its way back." Emily nodded, tears gathering but falling with a sense of quiet release rather than despair. Ranger leaned into her side, offering warmth that felt like home. Cole noticed one last object on the table, a journal bound in soft blue leather. Emily opened it and found page after page of her younger handwriting, filled with hopes she once held openly. "I thought I stopped dreaming," she murmured. "But I did not. He just hid the pieces." Ranger rested his chin lightly on her knee. The room felt fuller now, awakened by recognition, touched by the quiet courage it took to open the door in the first place. Cole stood slowly, understanding that this was not just a collection of memories. It was a map, pointing toward the truth Emily had been denied. And somewhere deeper inside the house, another door waited, the one that held the reason everything here had been hidden at all. The house felt quieter than it ever had, as if it knew the moment had come when silence could no longer hold its weight. Emily stood at the threshold of the hidden room, clutching the blue journal to her chest, the soft lamp glow catching the faint shimmer of hope returning to her eyes. Ranger remained close, his breath steady and warm against her arm, grounding her in a truth that felt both fragile and freeing. Cole Harlan watched her carefully, sensing the shift inside her, the way her shoulders straightened with a resolve that had long been pressed down but never fully broken. She looked at him with a calm that carried years of unspoken longing. "There is one more place," she said softly. "The room my father never lets anyone touch." Cole nodded, understanding without needing explanation. Ranger moved ahead, guiding them out of the narrow space and into the main hallway, where the air felt different now, lighter, as though the house itself welcomed what came next. They walked together toward the east wing, the quietest part of the estate. Emily led them past tall windows that reflected the silver blue of the evening sky, their soft patterns dancing over the walls. Like memories coming to life. They approached a door with an ornate brass handle, polished to a shine that looked almost ceremonial. Emily paused. "He always locked it," she whispered. But he never realized the key was in the desk drawer downstairs. He trusted order so much he overlooked the simplest things. Cole felt a faint smile tug at his mouth, not of amusement but of recognition, truth often hid in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to see it. Emily turned the key. The latch clicked with a quiet finality, and the door eased open. Inside, the room was bathed in soft golden lamplight. Stacks of documents sat neatly arranged on a long wooden table, alongside ledgers filled with careful handwriting and binders labeled with charitable organizations. Cole stepped inside, his breath steady as he examined the space. It did not feel abandoned. It felt curated, protected, guarded with the kind of devotion used to hide something powerful. Emily walked to the table, fingers brushing a ledger that lay open. "These are the missing funds," she murmured. "The ones the foundation said were lost. He hid them here. He kept them quiet so no one would question him." Ranger approached a shelf at the back of the room, gently nudging a stack of envelopes that had slipped from alignment. Emily lifted one and gasped softly. "These are letters from the board. They asked for my input. They wanted me involved. He told them I refused." Cole felt the truth settle like a slow dawn spreading across the room. Emily was never absent. She was erased. Gently. Quietly. Completely. She pressed the envelope to her chest, her breath trembling with a mix of sorrow and awakening strength. Ranger leaned against her leg, as if affirming that she was no longer invisible. Cole stood beside her, letting the quiet moment stretch. "You can show them this," he said softly. "You can put every piece back where it belongs." Emily nodded, a small but steady light filling her expression. "For the first time, I feel like I can." Ranger's tail gave a slow, warm wag, the kind that carried blessing more than celebration. They turned to leave, stepping together into the hallway where the air felt open, almost relieved. And as the door closed gently behind them, Cole understood what had truly shifted inside this house. The truth did not roar. It did not break walls or shatter windows. It arrived softly, carried on the paws of a loyal dog, in the quiet courage of a daughter finding her voice again, and in the gentle grace of a moment that allowed everything hidden to step fully into the light.